Welcome back to Sky. And I looked on my calendar. It's been about 11 months since I've had Leo Mazzone on. He is somewhere down there on the South Carolina-Georgia border, wishing he was back here in Maryland eating crab cakes, no doubt about that, but certainly golfing and fishing. And I must say, Leo, I'm unabashedly, you're one of my favorite baseball guests to have on, and I don't know what the hell to say to you when I put you on the radio and the team's 50 games under 500 and has literally sold off everyone, and now there's this rebuild. So I'm trying to find guys like you to say, all right, if I take over the team and I call Leo and say, Leo, come in here and run this place, run the pitching, run the minor league. It's interesting, right, because it's a build from scratch, but it's also you're chasing the Yankees and the Red Sox and you say, I don't like the next 5 years as a Baltimore Oriole fan. What say you, Leo? How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm right here on Lake Hartwell in South Carolina and keeping myself busy with baseball, the radio show, the lake, and helping out Furman University and doing pitching seminars across the country. And I met with Tommy John up in New York right before we went up to Cooperstown talking about healthy arms and what's going on with teenage baseball. And so we're involved in a baseball health network, too, for Healthy Arms, which is a great cause as far as I'm concerned. And I was also put in the Atlanta Sports Hall of Fame about 2 months ago.
Wow, we got a lot of catching up to do, you and me now.
Yeah. Hey, how about this, though? You'll like this before we talk about the Orioles. When I was introduced in the Atlanta Sports Hall of Fame from 1991 to 1993, we made 537 starts and we missed one. Then over the next 12 years, our starting rotations averaged making 146 of the 162 game starts. So that was unbelievable. I knew we had numbers like that, but you don't know the exact numbers. And then I look back on Baltimore and think about Eric Bedard and Jeremy Guthrie and guys like that, and we had a chance to do something, but didn't give Sammy much time to do it. Now, when you're talking about the Orioles, you're in for a long ride for about the next 4 or 5 years. And, I tried to tell them that years ago that when you're going to rebuild, you're going to check things out. You got to, number one, evaluate your scouts. You got to evaluate your farm system people, who's in charge of it, who's in charge of the pitching programs, who's in charge of the hitting programs. Because if you think about it, not a whole lot's been developed as far as pitching has been concerned for a long time. And that used to be one of their strengths. So that's where it starts, the evaluation of your coordinators, your hitting coordinators, the scouts. Are your drafts working? How's your player development going? All that has to come into play when you're going through a rebuild, and that rebuild is a long haul, and you're going to be sucking wind for a while.
Well, and you know how much we love baseball. You came here literally in the middle of the mess, right? I mean, you were recruited into this by Sammy and your friendship out in Cumberland. And by the way, Leo Mazzone is a Marylander. I had a couple people on my bus trip out to Canton that grew up with you in Cumberland. So your name was buzzing around, and I said, hell, I haven't talked to Leo in 10 months. Maybe it's because I don't want to talk baseball in football season, but I better hurry because it's not going to be baseball season around here much. And you have been on the record, and I wrote this book on Peter Angelos that I released last year called The Peter Principles it's been 25 years. It'll be 25 years next week, Leo, that he bought the team. And I'm trying to figure out what we have to show for it here. And I think after you left, just the fact that Buck came in here and Duquette, and they had success here. They were in the American League Championship Series 4 years ago.
Right.
I would have never have bet on that. I would have bet against that based on the ownership. But I say the blind squirrel finds the nut. But here we are 25 years later, and there's been this short little tenure, and now we're at the end of that. And here come the Yankees and the Red Sox to reload again. You've been as critical as anyone over 25 years from working inside the organization. Run the fan base here through what this looks like for the next 4 years, because you mentioned scouts, and the one thing that I've always wondered on the inside is everyone that likes baseball knows baseball. I mean, you know pitching, but I'm sure you have an opinion on hitting. You know pitching, but I'm sure you have an opinion on analytics or an opinion on a young arm or an opinion on a bullpen or a left-hander or a right. Everybody's got an opinion, but there's only so many experts, right? And to be an expert on what an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid looks like when you're drafting, that is a specific skill set that has nothing to do with managing the big league team, correct?
That's absolutely correct. And by the way, I was flown out to Scottsdale, Arizona to talk to an organization about the farm system and how I would develop the pitching in the farm system. Excuse me. And basically, and here's what you're up against. I told this organization that your top 5 starters, your top arms in AAA, 5 of them start. Your top arms in AA, the 5 of them start. Your top arms in A ball, they start, because you have to accumulate innings, because innings pitched is the greatest teacher a pitcher can have. And what they're doing is, in baseball now, is they're taking innings away from the development pitchers. And then I told him, I don't believe in developing relief pitchers in A ball. I believe that all your strong arms should start until you get halfway through AAA, and then it depends on the needs of your major league staff, and then you find out from your AAA manager and your AAA pitching coach who they think could fulfill the role as relievers, but they've been starting the whole time. For example, like a Steve Bedrosian or a Kent Merker. These guys started their entire career, but then they've had great careers as relievers in the big leagues.
Well, same thing with like a Zach Britton, right? I mean, a lot of these guys that convert, Greg Olson was a starter, and then they convert at some point. And I guess for major league purposes, if your agent probably likes that, if you're Zach Britton, to say, I'd rather you be pitching 72 innings a year versus 240 innings a year, right? I mean...
Well, it's harder to pitch the 72 innings in relief than it is to pitch the 200 innings as a starter. I mean, because the starter, it's mapped out for you. It's easier on your arm to be a starting pitcher than it is a relief pitcher. A relief pitcher, you have to have a program for your relief pitchers too. And what I did was I used to have our relief pitchers throw a little bit in the bullpen if they didn't warm up or get in the game for 2 days. But you're talking about relief pitchers now being completely abused. And then here's another thing you face. So one of the minor league pitching coaches said to me, he said, well, Leo, since you've been out of the game, they're throwing harder, so we can develop a reliever in A ball. And I said, apparently you didn't hear a word I said. If somebody throws hard, that means they have a good arm. And I just said your top arms start, And so, and don't tell me they throw harder, because they don't, because the gun's jacked up 5 miles an hour. They're not timing the pitch coming across home plate anymore. They're timing it coming out of their hand. So the gun's jacked up 5 miles an hour. The ball's juiced. We all know what's going on in baseball, So therefore, this crazy thing about relievers being abused now happens every single year. But your starting rotation will always protect your bullpen, or your starting rotation will always destroy your bullpen. And that's the bottom line. So that's how you start bringing along your pitchers in the farm system. But you got to let them pitch, to develop. But you certainly don't abuse them. But, if somebody needs to tell a minor league manager or minor league pitching coach how to handle a pitching staff from up top, then they shouldn't be coaching or being managers in the minor leagues.
Leo Mazzone is joining us here, the pride of Cumberland, Maryland, and now down on Lake Hartwell, where he keeps inviting me to go down there. What do you catch in the lake? What kind of fish are in that lake, Leo?
Corona.
With a lime, no doubt, right?
Yeah, we got the Corona cruising in the back of a cooler on the boat. That's what you got. And then the fish can stay in the water. I don't care, So
for you with the Orioles in this rebuild and doing what they're doing, they would say, and this is what they're going to pitch to the fans here as they lose 100 games a couple of years in a row. Look at what's going on in Atlanta. Look at what they did in Philly. Look at Houston. Look at what the Royals became. We need to rebuild that way. And I keep going back to this, Leo. Who's in charge? Who's in charge of the franchise? Who's standing in front of this saying, I'm doing the hiring and the firing, and this is my president of operations, this is my president of business? And we don't have that here, and you always spoke out about that, and nothing has changed. Leo, I'm 13 years now. I still don't have my media pass, so I don't even have the ability to ask a question, and the reason, and there's no one to ask a question to. I mean, I don't know who's in charge.
Well, you see, there was never a chain of command when I was there, and the one thing I regret that I didn't have the opportunity. They gave me a wonderful contract, and the fans were wonderful to me, but I never had the opportunity to sit down and have a face-to-face meeting with Mr. Angelos. And I could never figure that one out, and because I wanted him to get to know me and not have hearsay from somebody else that was providing the wrong information to him because of the people being jealous of my contract or jealous of the success that we had when we came over to Baltimore and trying to establish. In other words, when we would call a pitcher up from AAA, and I'd see what he looked like, where I came from, that wasn't a quality pitcher. he wouldn't have been called up. But so you're when you evaluate for mediocrity, when you coach for mediocrity, and you start becoming mediocrity, and that's one thing I refuse to accept. And that, of course, probably got me in trouble.
Well, lowering the bar was something that was never, never even considered in Atlanta. I mean, where you came from and coming here, I mean, I'm thinking you could write a book on what was right about that and what was wrong about this. And I sit here 25 years later, and Leo, I don't know what the hell to tell people. No, you know how much I love baseball.
It's like night and day from one place to the other. I'm going to tell you that because of the structure, the organization, and everybody knew their roles as far as the discipline, the ownership, the roles that everybody played from top to bottom. But there was a chain of command that was never broken. In other words, you had Ted Turner as the owner. You had Stan Kasten as the president. You had John Sherholtz, a Marylander, in the Hall of Fame, by the way, as a general manager. You had Bobby Cox as the manager. You had Leo Mazzone as a pitching. This was all together for 15 years. Then you also, with Bobby and I, were always very aware of what was going on in the farm system, explaining the same type of programs in the farm system you were going to use at the major league level. So everything worked in unison, and that's why you create a 15-year run, and that's why you create a healthy arms and same philosophy so that nobody's caught by surprise. It's one time, our emphasis is always on fastball command, which is on everywhere. But I used to have some Oriole minor league coaches say, Leo, wait till you see this pitcher. He can throw his curveball behind in the count anytime he wants. And I'm going, why get behind in the count? I'm interested in fastball command. But then when I said that, they thought I was a smart ass. And I wasn't being a smart ass. I was just saying my concern is why do we have to worry about breaking balls behind in the count when I want to be fastball command ahead in the count? So you put that emphasis on what you're trying to do philosophically.
Do you go ahead.
It's not that tough.
Do you even recognize baseball when you put it on now? As an example, I was in Pittsburgh on Sunday. I know you'll appreciate that being a Steeler fan up there. And we drove through Cumberland. We went out to the Hall of Fame over the weekend to see Ray Lewis go. We had 3 busloads of fans, coming back. And we come through Pittsburgh. We did the Pirates game. And I sit up in right field, up on the roof there at PNC Park, and I look down and I see the shifts.
Beautiful.
I see the shifts, though, from up above. You know what I mean? It's one thing on TV.
Sure.
You're watching the game and you can see the shift, but you're sitting in an empty ballpark and you're watching everybody on the left side of the infield move to the right side of the infield, and you start to say, this doesn't look like baseball from the upper deck to me anymore. And how do you beat it? And the real thing, you don't beat it in a lot of cases. And we've got these strikeouts, home runs. Nobody's hitting and running. Nobody's stealing bases. Nobody. I barely recognize it, and I wonder, my dad's been gone 25 years. If he came back, he'd say, why are they playing it this way? I think it's a less interesting game, even though it's a way more analytical, nerdier game from a scientific standpoint. But from a sit in the stands and watch a ball game, it's not nearly as entertaining as it used to be for me.
Well, when they talk about launch angle, that means a hitter was an uppercutter for us years ago. They talk about spin rate. Well, Johnny Sane was my guru, and he had a ball with a spinner attached to a spinner, and taught me all the different spins on different pitches 30 years ago. So that's nothing new either. Then you taught guys out when they learned how to hit that you wanted to use the whole field, correct?
Sure.
I talked to a hitting coach who said I said, why can't you teach guys in the minor leagues that you got to use the whole field and you beat the shift damn near every time? And they said, well, we don't want to mess with that because we don't want to ruin their swing, and we'd rather go for the long ball. And I thought, well, that's stupid. You're just playing right into somebody's hands that wants to pitch down and away, So the bottom line is, it's a swing and a miss, and it's the home run. And you're right. And then the way pitching staffs are used is an absolute joke. The emphasis on. I had a farm director asked me what I thought of the analytic that when the starting pitcher goes through the lineup the third time, they take him out because that's when the analytics say they're going to give up some runs. You know what I told him? I said, that's the manager covering his ass. I said, because because the bottom line is if they take the guy out, well, he's supposed to because analytics says so. But if he leaves him in, he gives up a run or two, they say, well, you're supposed to take him out because of analytics. It's like a joke the way Roberts handled Rich Hill, the pitcher from the Dodgers last year in the World Series, taking him out of games with no walks and 7 strikeouts and 4+ innings. Those things to me they insult your intelligence is what they do. There's still no reason why a starting rotation, and I talked to a team doctor, excuse me, and he said, you can develop a 6-inning pitcher, you can develop a 9-inning pitcher, you can develop a 10-inning pitcher. Well, one of the pitching coaches said, would take over a year to be able to do something like that. I said, it'd take 3 or 4 starts to do something like that. Come on. It's not that tough, and the bottom line is that you have to understand the fatigue factor in a game. Bobby Cox had this all the time. He called it a max-out inning. He said, Leo, is he going to max out? I said, yeah. He goes, okay, we'll have a reliever ready. It didn't have nothing to do with the pitch count, and if he did max out and he wasn't fatigued, then he was still pitching. But we firmly believed, and I still believe this, that your starting rotation takes care of your bullpen, and when you develop pitching, you have to have innings pitched be the greatest teacher they have, so you acquire that in the minor leagues from A-ball, AA, AAA, and then halfway through AAA, if you have somebody that's having success and your big league club needs a relief pitcher, then find out from the manager in AAA who they think can fulfill that bill or rebound. But you got to have starting pitching or forget it in this game. I don't care how many years you're going to play it,
Leo Mazzone is our guest, the pride of Cumberland. He's down in Atlanta doing some radio down there on Saturday. He has a radio show doing some fishing and some boating and some golfing down there. And every year you wind up in Cooperstown, right? So here we go again, like my buddy Brian Kowitz and Bilecki and all these guys that I have on my Facebook. They all run up to Cooperstown and are running down to Atlanta for weekends. But that thing will never be broken up, right? I mean, the Maddises and the Glavins and the Smoltzes and the Coxes and the Mazzonis and now Chipper are part of this. It's quite a thing you guys did for 20 years down there.
Oh, we had a great time. We had a private Braves party on a Saturday night with, oh my golly, the big three and the Chipper and Bobby and Hank Aaron and Dale Murphy and a lot of the guys that came back to have a private party on a Saturday night prior to Sunday, and Chipper, of course, and Cooperstown. Chipper Jones' speech was absolutely awesome. It really was. But then you look at it and you see Chipper Jones, then you see Trevor Hoffman, then you see Jim Thome. You're starting to see all the guys that we played against also, and you're thinking, man, I guess time's flying by, because it was hard for me to imagine. I was about 10 rows back looking up at Chipper talking, and his family was right to the right. And it's hard. It just seemed like yesterday that he was a rookie and he was helped us win the World Series in '95. Had the club made in '94 and hurt his knee down in Fort Lauderdale, and was out for the year. But what a great run! And he sacrificed 2 years at third base to play left field to appease the organization, and then went back to third base, which cost him, I think, a couple more All-Star games. But it was great to see, and just the memories and everything. And then, plus, I get to see all my heroes, too. Jim Palmer. I got to see Jim and talk to him a while. I hadn't seen him in a while. I got to see, Johnny Bench and the whole gang. And, it's just a wonderful time and such a privilege to be a small part at Cooperstown over the weekend. And the people were tremendous. All the Braves fans were there. A lot of San Diego fans for Trevor Hoffman, and a lot of Detroit fans for Jack Morris and Alan Trammell. And it was just great. The guys, all their speeches were great. They weren't very long. They on
a hot day. I love that Chipper Jones talked about Don Baylor. By the way, I mean,
Don Baylor, and I remember that. Basically, what Don Baylor told him was, "You're swinging like a blank from the right side. Go ahead and attack from the right side. Don't be afraid to strike out." And from Chipper got the message, and boom, he took off right-handed. Don Baylor was one of the greatest hitting instructors I was ever around. He actually asked me to be his pitching coach when he went on to manage in Colorado. I said, Don, I'm not leaving here, and I said, I don't want to be a pitching coach in Colorado. But you know what? and I found out, you know what I really found out too? Camden Yards. It's a bandbox.
Oh, it's Colorado East.
It's a hitter's haven, and I had people try to tell me it was a pitcher's ballpark. That's just some of the idiotic things I used to hear. Oh, this is a pitcher's ballpark. It don't carry to center field. I said, what's everybody looking at around here? And then I was trying to, and then when I listened to the conversations that I heard throughout the organization, in other words, one time I went to my first spring training there, they told me they had all these prospects. Maybe pitching prospects. They told me we got 15, 20 prospects. Well, you don't have that many in a spring training camp as far as that many are concerned. So then after the spring training was done, Sam asked me, he says, how many do we really have, Leo? I said, 7.
Well, that's the question now.
They're telling me there's 18 to 20 of them. You know what I mean?
Well, they brought 15 new names in. And the guys they got from Atlanta, look, the Atlanta thing for Gausman was much more of a salary dump of O'Day than it was, and also a salary dump of Gausman. They didn't want to pay Gausman $12 or $14 million a year to be a number 3 starter on a number 5 team.
Right.
Pretty much. And, so they did it. That, to me, that was a dump. I don't expect much out of that Atlanta deal, but I think
you never know. There might be a diamond in the rough there. You never know. I mean, but as long what they're accumulating, they accumulated some depth in their farm system, and if you accumulate so many, 1 or 2 of them are going to break. Break for the good.
Leo Mazzone is our guest.
Right.
Well, tell me about the Braves and what they did right to get this thing to where it is, because I ran into Nick Markakis down at the All-Star game. I mean, he looked happy there, and certainly he signed up at a time where they look kind of like the Orioles do right now. I mean, when he signed up there, it looked like they were going to lose 100 games for a couple of years, and this year's the year that Philadelphia and Atlanta have both sort of turned it around. There's a lot of optimism, new ballpark down there, up in the suburbs. This is what the Braves were planning for in what they did, which was the first reset they had done in a quarter of a century, quite frankly.
Right. Well, it had been a 10-year, pretty much a 10-year dry spell after '05, and but what they did was they look at the talent that they accumulated as far as the draft, and so that's your scouts, and going out and finding talent and not overestimating or underestimating the talent or the projections. For example, I used to, and this is going back to my days in spring training with the Orioles, they used to tell me they told me this one left-hander threw 90-some miles an hour, 1, 2, 3, lights out, 1, 2, 3, lights out. We hadn't pitched above A ball, and he was already a reliever, and he never threw 90-some miles an hour. He threw 89, and it wasn't 1, 2, 3, lights out. It wasn't that. It was a false report. I heard reports on pitchers. Wait till you see this, and I'd be looking, and I'm looking, and I'm still looking, and I haven't seen it. So what they're doing is they're evaluating from mediocrity, and I never saw it. Of course, I did see 5 or 6 guys, but you know what they told me about Jeremy Guthrie? They said, well, the Cleveland didn't like him because he thinks too much. I went, well. And I said, well, if you can't think, you can't pitch. And then they used to tell me Eric Bedard's a tough guy to manage or handle, Well, you know what? Eric Bedard was one of my favorite guys ever to coach. And if you looked at his numbers before and after, it's quite a different thing, So, Eric Bedard was a serious guy. He didn't like any kind of BS, and if you tried to BS him or give him some phony crap, you'd lose him. You had to be totally honest with him. And that's the way, so you adapt to those personalities. But what I'm saying is, this rebuild's going to come down to your scouts, your minor league coaches and pitching coaches, but you made a very good point. Who's running it?
Well, it comes down to your owner, right? It comes down to who's picking the people that are picking the people.
Well, you got to come in and put the hand. If you come in and say, okay, this, delegate the authority and have nobody cross over in those areas. That's a good story. You know what I mean?
Tell everybody what you're doing in Furman.
Minor league people.
I'm going to let you get out of here. I know you're doing good work out in the community. You love the animals, and you do stuff for animals down there. And
right.
I love my cat. And you're also doing a pitching coach thing at Furman with some young people too, right?
I help out the coaching staff with certain rules. You can't be on the field and all, but I help out the coaching staff, and I'll look at their guys, from afar, but then I have to I give the coaching staff the advice, and then they take it from there. But they've taken all my programs I had in Atlanta, and I've given them a bunch of tapes of watching Maddox and Glavine and those guys pitch. Not that we want the kids to pitch like that, but just looking at their deliveries and their mechanics and those types of things. And here's the other thing. If you're going to develop pitching in the minor leagues, you better get off that velo word. You got to get rid of it. What you want to do is, if a guy can pitch, he can pitch. And if you approach your season with your prospects, that they're going to be much better if they approach the game as pitching a fastball that's sneaky quick instead of overpowering. You're going to stay healthier, and your mechanics are going to come better, because we're finding out now the teenage all-star kids, the traveling all-star kids, they're being told if they don't hit a certain number on a radar gun, they don't make a traveling team, they don't get a scholarship, or they don't sign. And the scouts are telling them the same things. So what are they going to try to do? They're going to try to jack up the radar gun. If they try to jack that up, a pitcher trying to hit that number, that's what's going on with these bad elbows and all these Tommy John surgeries, because 50% of them are occurring before somebody's 19 years old.
Leo speaking the gospel of baseball, as he always does. We're going to calm him down and get him back out on the lake where things are calm and the fish are biting. Leo, I love you, man. I appreciate you coming on whenever we give you a call. And, I don't bother you too much around here because it's not going to be baseball season around here much over the next couple of years. So we will live.
You're in for a rough ride, that's for sure.
We're going to live vicariously.
I think the Oriole fans have been patient enough.
Well, amen. We'll see you soon, Leo. Be well.
Okay, take care, bud.
You got
Thanks.
it. Leo Mazzone, former pitching coach of the Orioles and, of course, famously of the Atlanta Braves, speaking the gospel of baseball there and loving him some crab cakes and some beers and some lake and some pitching and some golf and some Hall of Famers and some Cooperstown. Always good to check in with Leo Mazzone. That interview, as well as all of the other stuff we've done on Ray Lewis in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships directly to your email inbox free of charge each and every morning. It's all powered up by Planet Fitness and planetfitness.com. Get on in there. It's judgment-free. We got the kids going back to school here soon. Treadmills, some TVs, some workouts, some light weights. Planet Fitness, they'll treat you right. There's one right in the neighborhood for you. Also brought to you by the Maryland Jockey Club and Laurel Park, where they're racing this weekend. Maryland Million is October the 20th. Make sure you're circling that on your calendar. Also, the entries for Laurel Park in our morning newspaper, as well as always on the front of WNST.net. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, we're everywhere you are out in the interweb, including streaming live on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.